Hey guys, just a reminder, if you want to hear all of these wonderful B Plus podcast episodes completely ad-free, make sure you head over to Patreon or Podbean, where we are the featured podcast this week. You can subscribe for as little as $1 a month up to $10 a month, where anything you want to help us with, it really helps out. It's going to help us grow the site. It's going to help us redesign some things, and everything that we get through this and through the advertising as well is all going straight back into the podcast so that we can get Aussie Grapps out there for the rest of the world to hear about, for the rest of the world to see, so we can grow this mission of watch global, support local, and build indie wrestling. So if you want to be a part of that and get some really cool rewards like call-in shows, bonus episodes, ad-free like I mentioned, then head over to patreon.com/theb+ and subscribe today.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the main event of the evening.
Hold one, Andre!
You're not good at this. Get out. Let me tell you a personal story about Vince McMahon.
You just made the list!
Sorry, no speak English.
Dummy! Goodbye and good night. Hold two, on bar!
It's still real to me, damn it!
Dummy!
This is the worst town I've ever been in.
Hold three, the moss covered, three-handle family Gradunzel.
Mamma mia!
And now,
Unchained.media presents the B Plus Podcast with your host, Greg Unchained.
It's me, Austin! It was me all along, Austin!
number four, armbar.
I will never retire!
I still got 200 more. I got 200 more holes to list.
Alright, fellow B Plus players, welcome to the B Plus Podcast. I'm your host, Greg Unchained. Today is Friday. You know what that means. It's Aussie Grapps Day. It's our favourite day here on the B Plus Podcast. It's where we sit down, we take a look at everything happening in the world of Australian professional wrestling. We also like to sit down and talk to Aussie Grappler or Grappler adjacent person. This week, I'm speaking to veteran of the New South Wales wrestling scene. Well, all of Australia. He's travelled all around the place. Alex Titan, he has a big match this weekend against JXT at Hunter Valley Wrestling. So we'll get to that shortly. But first, let's take a look at everything happening this week in Aussie Grapps news. Coming out the gate, I'm going to start with a lot of PWA news. PWA are looking to have an absolutely fire 2019. They kicked things off in a big way this last weekend with Diego's last show featuring Jimmy Havoc. Of course, very bittersweet to see Diego go. He was fantastic at his job. He brought so much to that whole Black Label experience. If you want to hear specifics about this PWA show, Diego's last show that took place at Max Watts on Sunday, you can always go back in the archives, just scroll back down. It's the previous episode. We did an entire recap episode looking at everything that happened on Sunday afternoon in detail, but I'm just going to touch on broad strokes here. PWA are firing on all cylinders. As I said, 2019 looks like it's going to be an amazing year for them. They are just telling so many amazing stories right now. On Facebook this week, we saw a promo video where the champs were sort of all gathered around Heather, and Shazza showed up, and she's like, "Oh, we're having like a champs meeting because UG's there, the Four Nations are there," and Jack Bonza has a go at her. Like, you're not really a champion. When was the last time you defended that belt? Until you can beat this man, like UG for this belt is the real belt. You're not a real champion. And it looks like they're building towards. I mean, we saw a face-off between Shazza and Caveman UG at Fridays Are for the Babes, and the crowd were hot for it. I feel like that was them testing the waters, and now they're going to go ahead with it. I feel like they knew that the crowd would eat it up, and so they tested it, and now we're going ahead with it. It looks like we're going to get Shazza versus Caveman UG somewhere down the line for the title. Will they do away with the PWWA title and lean right into the intergender stuff, like Chikara or bar wrestling? I hope they do. I think that PWA do intergender better than most. It's just sort of become a fact of life with the promotion. They they're just wrestlers. There's no male wrestlers and female wrestlers. They are just wrestlers, and when the story makes sense, they get in the ring together to hash it out, and they do a fantastic job of it. Madison Eagles, of course, telling a brilliant story with Michael Spencer lately, of course, pulled short by her injury. She has, unfortunately, got some nagging issues that she needs to take care of, so she's had to take some time off. But Jessica Troy stepped in to fill in for her. We also had a match with Shazza McKenzie and Tree Hugger Lochy, and Shazza has, of course, she was a tag team champion with Big Fudge, so that title's already open for intergender stuff. So yeah, I think it makes sense. I think this is a logical next step. I think that the PWWA title doesn't necessarily need to be a thing. Like Bonza said, I can't fight for that title. Maybe they merge the PWWA and PWA titles. I don't know where they're going with it, but it definitely looks like we're heading towards Shazza vs. UG for the title, and I could not be more keen. Of course, there's also the story they're telling with the Nations. They're experiencing some tension ahead of the fight for Black Metal. Jack Bonza, Mick Moretti, they're having their issues. It's been boiling over for the last year or so, with Mick getting cheered and Bonza slowly getting frustrated with it. And they successfully defended against One Direction despite these tensions, and now One Direction are reconsidering their existence. They posted on social media this week, I've got the quote here, "Walking into 2019 the most confident we had ever been, and to fail at our biggest opportunity to date just shows that we need to go away for a while, reevaluate who we are as a band, and come back better than ever. We are so sorry. Broken heart emoji. One Direction." Now, this is interesting. Are they gonna shed the masks, much like Snapchat recently has? Are they going to come back maybe with a couple of members, kicked out, and bring in some new members? I don't know where they're going to go with it. They're reevaluating, obviously. Could this be the end of One Direction? Only time will tell. It's, again, another one of these stories that we're going to want to pay attention to moving forward in 2019. There's a lot going on. There's still, of course, the fight for Sanitation Commissioner in PWA. That's heating up between Big Fudge and Tree Hugger Lochy. Big Fudge released a very patriotic campaign video this week about throwing all our garbage into the ocean. It was a very passionate speech. I don't know, Fudge. I don't know if people are going to go for that plan, but people love Fudge, so maybe we'll be like, hey, we'll see how it goes, right? It doesn't sound like the best plan, but maybe Fudge can make it work. That video was in response to Lucci's campaign message, which came first. Lochy invoking the name of Diego ahead of his last show, and promising the removal of alcohol and the banning of phrases like "I'm the garbage man," and he wants to make PWA green again. I thought that made me chuckle. Going to make PWA green again. I thought that was great as a hilarious line. And yeah, these two have been building this feud for months, and I am way more excited for this than I should be, considering it's a match which literally centers on garbage. I love it. It's amazing. Last weekend's show also saw Maddie Wahlberg defeat Jimmy Havoc in a brutal no DQ match. I cannot wait to see this match in its entirety. It's not up as I record this. None of the shows from the weekend have made it onto On Demand yet, but it is what it is. They should be not too far off. They have a pretty good turnaround with PWA and MCW, so I'm expecting to see them soon. But I haven't seen it yet. The clips I've seen on Instagram of this match look amazing. Maddie Wahlberg promised to, kill Wahlberg, and he did. I'm pretty sure Maddie is in for a huge year this year. He's doing fantastic things, and I think he's going to ride that PWA wave right to the top as well. Over in Wrestling Go, he and Big Fudge are telling my favorite story in professional wrestling at the moment. It's a completely different kind of story. So they were hanging out at the training facility. I'll link the video in the show notes because it's an amazing video. But they were hanging out at the training facility, obviously near the ring, and Maddie was doing his Tinder thing. He's quite a successful bloke in that regard, I guess. And they had a bit of a moment leading to the, "Sometimes I wish I was you, Fudge. Life would be so simple." And then Fudge, of course, saying, "Sometimes I wish I was smooth with girls like Maddie Wahlberg." And Mick Moretti was listening in. He was under the ring because, just Mick Moretti doing Mick Moretti things. And he, as we know, he has experience. We talked about it. His whole thing with Elliot Sexton with the glove and switching bodies. He doesn't need the glove anymore because he's magic. He clicks his fingers and he's going to facilitate a body swap between Big Fudge and Maddie Wahlberg. So now, somewhere in Sydney, we have Big Fudge walking around in Maddie Wahlberg's body, driving around in Maddie Wahlberg's car, going on dates, just generally trying to enjoy life as Maddie Wahlberg. Meanwhile, Maddie Wahlberg is stuck in Big Fudge's body and struggling with things that are normally second nature to him, like sinking 3-pointers. It's really fun to watch. Definitely hit up the Wrestling Go Facebook. Like I said, I'll link it in the show notes to see that video. Wahlberg and Fudge's Instagrams as well. If you don't follow them on Instagram, I think it's Matty Wahlberg 21 and buttpuncher _. I'll link those as well. This is how committed they are to the story. They switched bodies, right? They switched bodies. They didn't switch phones. So all of a sudden, Big Fudge's story posts are selfies of Matty Wahlberg, feeling cute today. And it's just a picture of Matty Wahlberg with abs. and Matty Wahlberg's posts a Big Fudge, trying to do things like play basketball, and he can't do it anymore, and he's getting frustrated, and he's like pleading with Big Fudge to give him his body back. It's not funny anymore. So they have a match this Friday, this Freaky Friday, I suppose you could say, at Swan Song for Wrestling Go. It looks like, I guess they're going to go for the whole wrestling as each other, doing a moveset swap, which is brilliant. I love these matches. One of my favorite matches of all time was that Pete Dunne, Tyler Bate wrestling as each other. It's been done a few times now, and I love it so much. That has to be where this is going. If it's not where it's going, I'm going to be very disappointed. Matches like this make me wish Wrestling Go... Matches like this and the Iron Man match between Matty Wahlberg and Ricky South, which went up on YouTube pretty quickly, but it makes me wish that Wrestling Go was streaming via Kling, man, because I'm looking forward to this one. I'm hoping they release it as quickly as they did with the Iron Man match, because I feel like this one's going to be an incredible match to watch. So I really wish I could watch it live with the people who are there. A service like Kling is fantastic, and speaking of streaming on Kling, we talked about it last week. Jonah Rocks' last match in the country. It's happening on February 2nd. Now, last week I speculated that he would be up against one of the young boys from his Rampage dojo, and this week we got confirmation. Tommy motherfucking Knight. They made the announcement on ABC Radio, of all places, which is pretty awesome that the Aussie Grapps scene is reaching that level, but Tommy Knight will be the one sending Jonah Rock off in the main event for the February 2 event, Never Surrender. I'm looking forward to this match so much. Tommy Knight is someone we have pegged as a huge star in the Australian scene. He got an honourable mention on our New Year's Watchlist podcast, only because the Adelaide scene is so hot right now. So hot. But I'll be having Tommy Knight on the show in the near future. It's great to see Jonah having his last match against one of his students. I'm hoping, Jonah's going to do the usual, leave the territory on his back and put over, because a win like that would be so instrumental in Tommy Knight's young career. It's going to be beaming out to the world live on Kling. It's been advertised as Jonah Rock's last match in Australia, so people are going to be watching. I'll drop a link in the show notes. If you can't get to the show, definitely jump on the live stream. Check it out. It's going to be amazing. No matter where you are in Australia, you can stream this live. No matter where you are in the world, Iranians, I'm talking to you. You can stream this live by Kling. So I think it's like $10 to get the show, and you can jump on the hashtag and interact with those of us who are there in person enjoying the show. We can enjoy this whole thing all together as one big Wrestle Rampage family. It's going to be an amazing night seeing off Jonah Rock. I believe tears will be shed. I do. I believe tears will be shed. I make fun of Mikey for being a little emo when it came to Diego leaving, but I feel like it's going to be the same come Jonah Rock farewell. So, no judgment here at all. We're all a little emo at heart. A man who was on our New Year's 2019 watch list, Mike Boomer. He has his eyes set on Rat Daddy for this show, it seems. So no word yet on whether a match has been signed, but in a video sent to the Rampage Facebook, he and his Covenant declared a whole bunch of the Rampage roster to be sinners, but they very clearly labelled Rat Daddy as the worst of the lot, and implied very heavily that they were coming for him at Never Surrender. So it looks like we may be getting Mike Boomer versus Rat Daddy, which, Rat Daddy is so over as a face, and having him have to overcome this entire stable is going to be a fantastic move as far as I can see. So it's going to be fun to watch. Sticking to Adelaide for now, Riot City have been starting to line things up for that big doubleheader weekend that we have. So the Rampage show is on Saturday, the 2nd of February, but Friday night, the 1st, at HQ, we have RCW Reanimated. We found out over the break that we would be getting Zach Sabbath vs. Chris Basso 3, a rematch for the RCW title, but we also found out this week that we're going to get a tag team title match between the current champions, the Pereira and the Armstrongs. This one should be incredibly fast-paced, should be very exciting. The Pereira are, in my opinion, one of the best tag teams in the country, and with no disrespect to the Millennials or Gods and Monsters or any of the other hurdles Pereira have faced on their way to the top, this one may be their biggest challenge, their most difficult challenge, because Jet and Nick are brothers. Brothers that team together, it's a special bond. I don't know that you can even have a better team than a pair of brothers who are on the same page. So I hope the Pareja are well prepared going into this one. It's going to be a challenge. Riot City Wrestling have also spent this week uploading Battle for Supremacy, the big show that closed out 2018 with Zach Sabbath winning the championship in a shock ending to the year. You can watch the entire show now on YouTube, link in the show notes. I say this all the time. Riot City Wrestling is the most accessible product in Australia. All of their major shows go on YouTube completely free, normally just a few weeks after the event. So, the link, like I said, the link will be in the show notes. Check it out. Riot City always put on a great show. It's definitely one you want to watch. There are some fantastic matches in this one, not least of which, of course, the main event, Zach Sabbath, Chris Basso 2, which we're getting that rematch for at Reanimated. So, a few more announcements for the week. Wrestle Rock have revealed Jimmy Havoc's matchup for this weekend's show as the Cold War heats up. Our prayers have been answered because Mad Dog McCrae, probably the most experienced and well-renowned deathmatch or hardcore worker currently active in this country, is set to face Jimmy Havoc in a no DQ match. So if this CZW shit, as one fan put it at PWA, if that isn't for you, this may not be the show for you, because there will be blood and thumbtacks and glass and staples and all sorts of madness this weekend at the Corner Hotel. It's going to be mayhem. Mayhem, I tell you, which I hope isn't gimmick infringement, because Mayhem Pro Wrestling have also announced episode 2 is coming February 10th, 2019. Sunday Wrestling returns to Melbourne. Their first show is up on YouTube. It was a really fun watch. Once again, link in the show notes. I enjoyed it a lot. Some really great talent on the first show. It looks like the second is going to feature much of the same talent with a few new additions. So far we know that Avery and Erica Reed will be bringing their rivalry to the promotion, as well as Cousin Ali and Kaz Jordan teaming up to face Loverboy Lochy Hendricks, Uncle Paul's favorite nephew, and Jake Navarra. It's always good to see new companies pop up, and so when Mayhem popped up, we were very happy, and to see that they've made it to a show 2, that's always a good thing. So I just hope they don't break the bank booking Lochy Hendricks, since, he did announce at MCW this last weekend that Uncle Paul from Connecticut, wonder who that could be, has reached out and offered him a contract. So he's going to be relocating to Orlando, and he's currently embarking on his farewell tour. I can only imagine his price tag has gone through the roof with this one. So I know David Geller, his social media manager, did post about bookings for the farewell tour. He specifically mentioned podcasts. So I have reached out. I have sent an email to the official booking email. I'm sure I will hear back from Lochy or David soon. No doubt they are swamped with booking requests, because Lochy Hendricks is a star and a star on the rise. So I'll be doing my best to get the story for you, B+ players. So fear not. I find it interesting that I'm not going to lie, I find it very interesting that Uncle Paul, as he calls him, is letting him announce this. I mean, we still haven't heard. We know Jonah Rocks' last match is coming up, February 2nd. And there's been a lot of rumors that he's going to NXT, he's going to NXT UK, that he's definitely signed with WWE. But Jonah stayed mum on the whole thing. He stayed very hush-hush. There's been no official announcement from WWE. There's been no official announcement from Jonah Rock. So it seems odd to me that Uncle Paul would let Lochy Hendricks make an announcement of this kind when other people aren't able to make these announcements. So I'll be sure to ask the hard questions, should I get the chance. Other major happenings coming out of MCW last weekend. We have new tag team champions, new with bunny ears, because what's old is new again. The Loose and Reckless, throwback. They were our tag team Tuesday choice this week on the Instagram. Big shout out to Dandez, by the way. She's doing great work turning the Instagram into something that's a little more frequent for our fans, because I'm terrible at most social media. So yeah, the Loose and Reckless, they reunited with the goal of proving to the Brat Pack just who the best tag team in MCW history really is. And they did it, toppling the champs and the massive TMDK team of Sex Rock, Elliot Sexton, Jonah Rock, becoming 3-time MCW tag team champions. Now, on the recap cast, I said that I thought this was a strange choice, since that, they've only just reformed, and I thought it would have been cool to see them be the underdog babyface team that get denied, that, the heels sort of find a way to win, and then ultimately they can have the big match. But what I realized after having a look at Cage Match is a brilliant resource, by the way. I knew that the Brat Pack were closing in on the Loose and Reckless's record as longest running tag team champions. I didn't know just how close they were. They were only 2 weeks away from surpassing the Loose and Reckless as the longest reigning MCW Tag Team Champions. So it makes sense to do it now, to cut them off and leave that feather in the cap of the Loose and Reckless. I'm looking forward to seeing where this one goes in the future. You got to think Brat Pack are going to come back and try to get those titles back again. And I'm very much looking forward to seeing this match because this match sounds incredible. We also found out Mikey Nicholls is returning to MCW. Mikey Nicholls, of course, formerly Nick Miller of NXT's The Mighty. Not Nick Miller from The New Girl. It's a different Nick Miller. He returns February 2nd for Uprising. Now, it's very interesting to me that February 2nd features shows from MCW, EPW, and Rampage. They're all running shows on the 2nd of February. I know the On the Turnbuckle fellas have speculated that something may be going on there. Conspiracy Greg, that's my alternate Conspiracy Greg, definitely feels like it isn't an accident. And I don't know, having TMDK spread out all across the country on that night makes me feel honestly quite scared for Australian professional wrestling. A little video released on MCW's Facebook crossed out The Mighty in TMDK, replaced it with The Mad Don't Kneel. Very curious to see what this means for Mikey Nicholls, what he's up to, and of course, very excited to see him return to Australian wrestling, no matter where it is. So even if it's in Melbourne City Wrestling, if it's not his home of EPW, which I would have anticipated him to return to EPW first, very excited to see him making a return, and curious to see what the ramifications are with Jonah Rocks leaving, with Mikey Nicholls returning, how TMDK is gonna handle this little shake-up. So we also found out that MCW will be co-hosting this year's Southern Rumble with SPW over in Invercargill on the South Island there in New Zealand. So last year's Southern Rumble had the same venue, the ILT Stadium in Southland, and they drew over 1,200 rowdy fans. So, of course, MCW 100 also drew in the vicinity of 1,200 plus fans. Both of these companies are doing amazing things, building great successes, huge crowds, and it's awesome to see their relationship blossom into, co-hosting super shows, and, can only imagine what they're going to be able to do when they co-brand a show, when they're both pulling 1,200 people in various places. So it takes place in July, which gives us all plenty of notice to book our flights and try to get over there. So flights to the South Island aren't the cheapest. I appreciate the time given so that we can keep our eye out for sales. If anyone sees any good sales on flights for around the July 13 point, let me know so I can let everyone else know, because it's going to be a must-see event, so we want to get over to it if we can. Speaking of SPW, over in New Zealand, at the end of last year, Ben Wolfe resigned as GM of the territory, and the SPW social media accounts have announced this week that they have found a replacement. A new GM will be revealed this weekend at Fight Nights 11. Also on this week's Fight Night, Jimmy Havoc is in town. He's having a match with Will Power. So for our 10 or so listeners that I know come from New Zealand, I watch the stats. I see you. Reach out. Say hi. We need help with New Zealand. It'd be good to have some people to talk to over that way, so I know better what's going on other than just from social media. But yeah, get on out to this one because it looks fantastic. Of course, for those of us not on the South Island over there, we can always just download the SPW app on the App Store. I talked about it last week on the App Store, on Google Play. We can tune in for that one as soon as it goes up. I'll let you know when it does. Some more news and announcements coming out of the last week, though, since I'm still catching up on things even, so beyond the last week. But Blue Mountains Pro Wrestling is coming back. Blue Mountains Pro ran a few shows a couple of years back, and it's good to see them coming back around. More places for the boys to work is always good. They'll be doing a few features on the show circuits, with the Oberon show coming up February 9th. That's their big comeback, so wish them all the success in the world. Looking forward to seeing what comes from this and whether it's going to translate back into running regular shows. I hope it does, because it's always good to have more places for the boys to work. And the girls, too. And speaking of the girls, something I haven't touched on yet that was announced over the break, Wrestling Go, You Go Girls. That event is coming up. I don't have the details in front of me, but keep your eyes on the Wrestling Go Facebook page, because they are putting on an all-women's wrestling event. I believe it's in March. Don't quote me on that, but they've got an all-women's wrestling event coming up. I'll talk about it more as more details roll out.
Promotional consideration paid for by the following.
January is here, and we are fast approaching WrestleMania season. Royal Rumble and the road to WrestleMania are around the corner, so the time to dilly-dally is past us. If you want to experience WrestleMania live, and who doesn't, let's be honest, you deserve it. The best and really the only way to do it is with All Aussie Travelers. All Aussie Travelers are new to the wrestling travel package game, but they are veterans at travel, and they have put together a package that cannot be beaten. For less than $7,500, all Aussie travellers are going to send you to New York, New York, with return flights, airport transfers, full accommodation, and tickets to the WWE Hall of Fame, NXT pre-show party, NXT TakeOver, WrestleMania, Monday Night Raw, SmackDown Live, and more. The coolest part about these packages is that for NXT TakeOver, Raw, and SmackDown, you are going to be seated in your own private VIP suite, normally not available to the public, but all Aussie travellers have you covered, man. They got this locked down. It has its own bar, it has its own bathroom access, and all the luxuries that a VIP box comes with, not least of which, of course, an incredible view for everything happening in the ring. All of this for under $7,500. They're practically giving these packages away, man. You'd be crazy not to check it out. So head over to All Aussie Travellers on Facebook. The link is in the show notes. And tell them that the B Plus sent you. And let's go watch WrestleMania in style. Also this week, Battle Championship Wrestling have announced that Robbie E is coming down under to be a part of BCW 26, which, of course, also features a huge 60-minute Iron Man match between Mick Moretti and Dowie James, so that one's going to be amazing. Robbie E is a former TNA star. He most recently showed up on The Rock's Titan Games on NBC, so BCW doing their thing, bringing more talent down under. Always good to get outside guys in. The choices are always interesting from BCW, but anytime we can get our guys working people from other places, from other countries, even from other states, it's good for the boys. So BCW 26, Robbie E, get around it. Elsewhere in Melbourne, we get word from PCW. They have announced that Sid Parker is returning to the territory for their Australia Day show, which of course also features the finals of the Ignition 9 Summer Series. Good to see Sid Parker making a return. I'm a big fan of his work, and I very much enjoy it. He's working in less and less places these days, and I'm not sure why that may be, but it definitely excited to see more of Sid Parker because all I can base it on is the ring work, and I'm a big fan of Sid Parker's ring work. So here in Adelaide last week, we saw AWR, Australian Wrestling Revolution. They crowned their first ever champion in an 8-man single elimination tournament. The mercenary Slade Mercer is the champion, which is great news because I couldn't make it to the show. As we know, I've talked about it on other episodes this week. I had some car trouble. It's a whole thing. It prevented me from getting out, and Slade was one of the main reasons I wanted to check out this show. I'm a big fan of Slade Mercer, so having him come back as the champion can only be good news. Looking forward to plenty more Slade Mercer in Adelaide as the AWR champion. Meanwhile, in Queensland, it's one of my New Year's resolutions for the B Plus to make sure I get across more Queensland wrestling, along with Tasmania, New Zealand as well. I've talked about this before. So this week, Pro Wrestling League launched their first show in its entirety on YouTube. Big thanks to Pro Wrestling League. They're doing a lot up there to help advance the Queensland scene, help get it in front of more eyes. It's good to see a full show, to see footage of a full show in its entirety. It was a great show as well. Really well produced, well booked, top to bottom. Great talent, putting on great matches. They brought in just the right interstators. Robbie Eagles was there, Mick Moretti was there. It was a fantastic show all around. Really got my eye on some of these guys coming out of Queensland. I think it may be worth doing an entire show to take a look at, or maybe I'll roll it in with next time I do an Underworld recap or something like that after I watch another show on demand. It might be worth doing an entire show where I sit down and watch this with someone else and we talk about it and talk about, who caught our eye, because this is sort of the first big thing from Queensland to really catch my eye. So I'm definitely looking forward to breaking it down in full. But Queensland got on my radar for something less awesome this week. Big props to Pro Wrestling League. They're doing a fantastic job. It looks like an amazing company. It looked like an amazing show, and I'm looking forward to seeing more from them. Their next show, of course, coming up, The Rise of the Rapscallion, and we'll talk about that more as it approaches. But Queensland got on my radar for something less awesome this week. The downside of my attention is sometimes I'll see things that are bad, and I will, of course, talk about it. So prepare for a rant here. Gavin McGavin held a seminar last weekend ahead of his booking at New Valhalla Wrestling, and from what I hear, the turnout was terrible. 10 or so people showed up for each day of this seminar. Gavin is one of the best wrestlers this country has ever produced. So if his recent work in EPW isn't enough to sell you on this, take a look at the Gavin vs. Australia tour. He's getting booked everywhere for a reason. He knows his stuff. I talk with Alex Titan on this week's interview about work ethic, about working as many places as you can, training as often as you can, and this is bumming me out, man. It's no secret. Queensland wrestling is a little behind the rest of the country in terms of exposure, of course, in terms of quality of promotion, perhaps, in terms of quality of matches a lot of the time as well. There are some guys up there with tons of talent and even more with plenty of potential, but all of that means nothing if you're not putting the work in. And I saw a post about the Gavin McGavin seminar attendance being disappointing, and I don't know who did or didn't go. I do know that there isn't a single person in the state of Queensland, or probably the entire country, and then some, who can't learn something from Gavin McGavin. I mean, it's going to be up to the individual to determine whether the value of what they could learn from a seminar host is going to be worth paying, parting with their hard-earned dollars, which I respect that, but this was $60 for a 2-day seminar, right? It comes down to about $10 an hour or less. And if the amount that a guy like Gavin, who does wonderful work with the EPW Academy, if the amount he can teach you isn't worth that price to you, I don't know. That seems insane to me. So a lot of you know this. I did some training way back when with Australian Pro Wrestling Gym. I started in the same group as Keegan and Tar Lee and Jason Dewhurst, a few others as well. I stopped doing it when I had kids and my priorities changed, right? I stopped because I couldn't commit to what needed to be done. I knew what needed to be done. It's not hard to know what needs to be done. You look around at the best in the country, you look around at the best in the world, and you figure out what they're doing and you do your best to match that, right? And I looked around and I saw the best in this country. I saw the PWA guys, Robbie Eagles, Mick Moretti, Jack Bonza, Adam Hoffman. I saw, the guys down in Melbourne, the guys at the Wrestle Rampage Dojo, AJ Istria trains like a madman. You look at these guys and they're all training 4 times a week at least, putting in time in the ring, getting the reps in, matches on weekends, plus gym, full-time jobs. All around the country, there are guys putting in that level of work. I look at that and I think to myself, if I'm not ready to work that hard, if I don't have the time to work that hard, what am I doing here, right? When the kids came along, I stopped wrestling. As soon as they got old enough that I can have a decent amount of hours to work on my pursuits, I figured I have enough time here to dedicate to becoming the best Australian pro wrestling podcaster. So I spend hours a day dedicated to that craft. If you don't want to be the best at what you're doing, why are you even doing it? That means investing the time. It means learning from the best. Back when I was training, and this is why I love Keegan and Tarly and that whole group I came up with, because our beginners class was 1 day a week. But we were organizing bonus sessions with Lee, getting in reps before work, keeping each other motivated at the gym. We put in together and bought gym mats, which my dog eventually ate. Sorry, guys. But we put in together and bought gym mats so that we could get together at each other's houses and practice our rolls and our bumps and our takedowns and our transitions. That's what it takes. You wrestle every chance you get. You go to every seminar. Gavin himself attended a Jimmy Havoc seminar at the PWA Academy on Monday. That's the attitude of a winner. Here's a guy who's been doing this for a decade. Wrestling every weekend. One of the best this country has ever produced. I personally watch Gavin McGavin. I find him to be a far better wrestler to my tastes than Jimmy Havoc. But there he is, at the seminar, learning. Because there is something that everyone can teach you. If you aren't learning, you're dying. There is no one in Queensland wrestling who can afford to miss a seminar like this if they are taking wrestling seriously. No one. 10 people at the seminar? You gotta be kidding me. How am I meant to take the scene seriously if it's not taking itself seriously? I don't know if it's the I already wrestle every weekend, I don't need to train attitude. I've seen that in guys before. I saw that attitude in people back in New South Wales when I was training. It's disgusting. You can always get better. If you don't want to be better tomorrow than you were today, then fuck off. Sorry. Bookers need to pay attention to this stuff too. Pay attention to who is and isn't training regularly and put your foot down. Don't book people who aren't training. Don't book people who aren't learning. Don't book people with that attitude. At that point, you're enabling, right? But then I won't have enough guys to run shows. Then don't run shows. You're not making any money anyway. You're in Australian wrestling. Chances are, the reason you're not making any money is because you're surrounded by apathetic people who are going nowhere. Scale back, get everyone training, find the right group, and when you're satisfied with the guys you have training consistently, Start back up again. That's how you build the scene. There are people working hard to rehabilitate Queensland wrestling. Don't get me wrong, right? And I'm sure there are good reasons for not attending, having to go to a full-time job, all this sort of stuff. There's reasons. But this hurts it. Like, seeing 10 people? Come on. Start giving a damn. It may not even be that. Like, another thing that I remember from when I was training is the territorial way of thinking, right? So, I can't go to a seminar run by school X. I attend school Y. I'll get heat. That's bullshit. That's bullshit. If someone is going to have heat with you for wanting to be better, that person doesn't want the best for you and you shouldn't be working with them anyway. Don't care. Like, at the end of the day, if you go learn more, you bring that back, the people around you learn more, the matches improve. When the matches improve, the house gets bigger. When the house gets bigger, everyone makes more money. Work with everyone. Closing yourself off to the rest of the wrestling world is a recipe for disaster. It's an old way of thinking. It needs to die. It needs to die now. Queensland wrestling has disappointed me this week, in case you can't tell. I'm just ranting and raving like a lunatic. I know, who cares, right? I'm a mark with a microphone, but I'm also a paying customer, and I'm not going to pay to see people who aren't investing in themselves and taking it seriously. And, I talk about wanting to cover Queensland wrestling. Do I even want to cover Queensland wrestling when you can't even get, 20 people, 30 people to go to a Gavin McGavin seminar? Come on, guys. Let's get your shit together. When someone comes to you with knowledge as cheap as $10 an hour, especially the kind of knowledge that Gavin McGavin has and can offer, I expect to hear that people were being turned away at the door because the gym was bursting at the seams. That's what I expect to hear. Thank you for listening to my TED Talk. I'm going to go calm down, and I'll let you listen to the interview I recorded with Alex Titan, where he echoes similar sentiments. It's all about work ethic. It's all about trying hard. Talk to Alex Titan. Here it goes. All right, joining me at this time, the longest running Hunter Valley Wrestling champion, Mr. Alex Titan. How are you, sir?
Hey, mate. Good, man. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on the show. So I want to start right at the beginning. For those who don't know the Alex Titan story, we'll get to the Hunter Valley Wrestling longest running champion. It's all impressive. We'll get to all that. But for those who don't know Alex Titan, how long have you been doing this thing, man?
I had my first professional match in 2003.
Right, so it's been
I don't know. How long is that? Quite a long time.
16 years, yeah. 2019,
yeah.
So 16 years, that's crazy.
It was September 2000. Not quite, but...
Right, yeah. So it's been going a long time. And am I correct, did you start up in Queensland?
No, I had actually already been doing it for quite some time. I started in Melbourne at PW many moons ago, before PWA Melbourne, the original PWA, even broke off, and the Lobos and the Enforcers and the Steve Frosts and the Mad Dogs were all still a part of PCW.
Right.
And if I recall correctly, it may have been the only promotion running in Victoria at the time. I think occasionally spot shows out in Tullamarine, there might have been a few little bits and pieces happening, but by and large PCW, which is still running today and is, I think, the second longest running promotion in the country, was the only one in Victoria at that time. So yeah. Right,
which is crazy to think about now when you look at it, because there's like 3 shows on every weekend there in Victoria now.
Yeah, at least. I think there's probably more than that some weekends now, which is, I think, is really good. I think the best thing for young talent coming through is to work as many places as possible with as many people as possible in front of as many different and diverse types of crowds as possible. So I think the more promotions, the better. I know a lot of people are reticent to have too many because they think it might split the audiences, but as long as you're presenting a unique and compelling product, I don't think there should be any issues. If you're offering something unique and you've got certain guys that only work for you, or you're bringing in interstate talent, or you've got compelling storylines, or you've got something that sets you apart from the other promotions in the area, that hook There may be people that are wrestling fans in general that will come to the show regardless of who's promoting it, and you may get your fans that are true blue, die-hard fans of specifically your promotion. And I think you're seeing that with MCW's built a very loyal fan base, but you could say that it's an entirely different fan base to that of Underworld Wrestling or a Warzone or an Adrenaline Pro or a Wrestle Rock. Again, there's those wrestling fans that will go because they don't care who's promoting it, they just want to see wrestling. And there's others that simply go to their local show, and they may not even be aware that other shows exist for them, or they just like what it is that each individual promotion presents.
Yeah, I completely agree. I see a lot of the time when new promotions pop up, I see people saying, like, online and whatnot, oh, another new promotion in this place, another new promotion in that place. I'm like, that's another place for people to work. Like, when it pops up, I'm always like, I hope these guys have something special. I hope it becomes something good. That's my general attitude when I see someone new pop up. Because yeah, more places for people to work can never be a bad thing, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of a double-edged sword. I am a big advocate of lots of places or more places for the boys. But also, you got to be careful that people are worried that someone like an MCW has obviously put so much time and effort into building a certain aesthetic to their shows. They're obviously very heavily focused on the production values and presenting a high-quality in-ring product. And I think people are concerned that other places with less experience or less production value or less quality in-ring talent is going to negatively bias or negatively affect potential fans of Australian wrestling. For example, a first-time punter. They might come and see ABC's first ever show, and obviously on the first ever show, the lighting's not always fantastic. You might have a few rookies. You might people are worried about being tarred with the same brush.
Right.
But I mean, it's such a there's good and bad in every promotion. Let me just put it that way. I think the places like your Warzone or your Underworld or your MCWs are doing such good business that a show in Berwick, for example, that's drawing 100 people with not the best in-ring quality is not really going to drastically affect their ability to draw 10 suburbs away the next weekend.
Yeah.
Especially when you look at what they've got, like they're bringing in Nick Miller, or formerly known as Mikey Nichols. They've got Tennille on shows. They've got Jimmy Havoc was on last weekend's show. They're regularly using Will Ospreay. They've got Robbie Eagles, who's wrestling in New Japan. They're not going to be so much affected by those other shows. And it gives the younger guys an opportunity to hone their craft in front of smaller crowds and iron out the key little intricacies that make them great pro wrestlers before they get to the big show. And that should be the objective of all those guys on those smaller shows, is to get to one of those big shows.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So all of this is to say, so we've gone off on tangents, but that's fine. That's what we like to do here. We started at PCW, right? Down in Melbourne.
Indeed.
Yeah. And yes. So it's been a long journey, and you've made your way up north, you've made your way back down. You're in New South Wales now. What do you see as the differences between the various states that you've worked primarily?
I think Melbourne has all been the epicenter of Australian pro wrestling. Not always. I think for a long time, PW in Perth was blazing its own trail and doing things that no one else had done. But Melbourne has always, to me, been the place that the most exciting things were happening. The best wrestlers were coming out of. I don't know, Jonah Rocks will probably stab me in the face for saying this because he's Adelaide through and through. Yeah. But a lot of the guys that are now populating Wrestle Rampage shows are products of Melbourne. Or they're weekends that Wrestle Rampage doesn't have shows, trying to get booked on Melbourne shows.
Right.
Everyone wants to work in Melbourne. Any opportunity to work in work in Perth. It used to be an opportunity, and I hope one day it will be again, to work in Queensland, but everyone wants to work in Melbourne.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, new stuff popping up in Queensland. Like just last night, I'm up to the main event. I haven't watched the main event yet, but last night they uploaded the Pro Wrestling League's first show, and that's a fantastic production so far. I would have liked commentary to be on it, but that can't happen all the time. So, but it's a really good production. So Queensland are starting to sort of step up their game.
They the guys behind that, and I will keep my lips tight on who exactly is behind it. I'm sure it'll eventually come out. But the gentleman that I know to be behind that spent a significant amount of time prior to putting on their first show picking the brains of many people across many positions, across many states of the Australian wrestling industry, just picking brains, asking questions, floating ideas, getting opinions and feedback on things that they had thought of, and trying to learn from as many people's mistakes before they got the ball rolling as they could without having the ball rolling, if that makes sense. They're two very motivated guys in terms of bringing Queensland back to its glory days, which was, I think, 05, 06 PWA Queensland, Rise of the Warriors, Chris Hero, coming out and doing those big tournaments, Shadow Phoenix, Mason Childs, AJ Istria, all those guys that were killing it. At one point in time, for about 2 or 3 years, Queensland was a real hotspot. And those guys want to take Queensland back to that hotspot, but they're doing it in a unique way, and they're using business acumen not often seen in pro wrestling to drive the business from behind the scenes in a manner that will hopefully give it more legitimacy and a continued success than other, perhaps fly-by-night promoters would have given it.
Right. So what you're saying is what I see when I look at it and I say, man, these guys look really professional. This looks like a good product. It's a lot goes into that. It's not not something, not anyone can just jump out there and do this. And so is that what happened in Queensland? Like you had a lot of people just being like, oh, I could do wrestling and sort of throwing it together. And now you've got people actually taking the care and time. Is that sort of the difference there?
Yeah, a lot of it was, there was a lot of infighting in Queensland wrestling for a very long time. There was a lot of key groups that splintered in different directions because of personal relationships that couldn't be worked out. And it was a case of, I don't want to work with him. I think I'm better than him. I can start running my own show. There was also a couple of money marks who I won't give a great deal of airtime to that got it in their head that they were going to be Australia's Vince McMahon and run an alphabet soup of promotions over the last 10 years.
Right.
With a litany of horrible sticker belts, in poorly promoted shows, in horrible venues with people that had no business being on shows. And that killed the desire of a lot of outside talent to come in and be able to pass on that knowledge to the local guys.
Okay.
In combination with the fact that there was not a credible, regular training school for guys to continue polishing their craft up there.
Right. Yeah, and that's integral, right? Like you got to be. This is something you got to be. I'm on the episode that I'm recording this week. I'm going on a rant about this. You got to be training like many days a week to be good at this thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably not the best person, not the best advocate for it. I believe in it wholeheartedly. In my case, it's probably a matter of do as I say, not as I do. Okay. Just because I have so many external focuses now. At the time when I was, I guess, at the peak or at the firing on all cylinders in the Alex Titan story, then I was getting to training as often as I could, whether it be AWF or PWA or in the gym or whatever it was at the time. I am a big advocate of people continually training. I mean, I always say the best example of that being worthwhile is the RCW guys in Adelaide. Your Chris Bassos and your Matt Bassos and all of those guys that are integral to the Riot City roster and shows are training 2, 3, 4, 5, however many nights a week, and they're in their breaking down and setting up the ring and moving it into the venues and training before shows and after shows. And they're such an eager bunch to suck up whatever knowledge they can, and it shows in their product, because some of those guys, although they're not as well known externally, are doing stuff in ring and on shows, which I wish more people were watching, that very few other people in Australia have the capacity to do, just because they're getting in the repetitions.
Yeah.
And I mean, the PWA guys in Sydney are another example of that. They're inarguably the best in-ring talent in the country, and it's because they're training 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 nights a week.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure like your Jack Bonzers are training in between Newcastle and PWA. I would hazard a guess that he's doing 4, 5, 6 nights a week of training.
Yeah.
In addition to gym, in addition to a full-time job, in addition to, I think he's married as well. And that's why he is where he is.
Yeah, this is the thing. It's all about that work ethic, right? So I know I've done some basic training, right? Like I trained with Australian Pro Wrestling Gym with Lee Leslie, and I did some basic training there. But you know, I had some kids and all that sort of thing happen, and I was like, I can't commit to training 4 times a week. And I look at like the best in the country, like Mick Moretti, Jack Bonza, Robbie Eagles, like you mentioned, the Riot City guys, AJ Istria as well, is training like a madman. Like every day of the week, these guys train. And you got to look at it and go, I can't do that. So there's no point. Like, if you can't be the best, why bother? Like, that's the mindset I go into it with. Is that the kind of mindset that you would need?
I think in the current landscape, if you have a mindset anything other than that, then you're wasting your time. Because there is so many guys that are so desperate and so eager and so hungry to soak up every bit of knowledge and just train, and wrestle, and take feedback on board and listen and watch and learn. You're going to get left behind. Like you mentioned, all those guys that are all talent, your Morettis, your Robbies, your Istrias, all those guys, but they've all got a crew of young guys underneath them, like chomping at the bit to take their spot.
Yeah. Those
guys are pushing so hard because they've got a crop of guys underneath them ready to push them out of the way and take the limelight. Like your Carter Deems and your Matty Wahlbergs and your Paris de Silvas and your Kaya Drakes and your Tommy Knight. I'm not as familiar with the rest of Rampage guys, but your Rat Daddies and your Tommy Knights and all of those young crop of dudes are so desperate to get on shows. Like the current crop of guys have to work hard to maintain their spot.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm always amazed at the fact that some of the guys you just listed and some of the guys you're talking about there have been doing this for less than 2 years.
Yeah, well, as far as I'm aware, like, I mean, I have cycled back on my involvement in the last 18 months. So I'm not as familiar with the current crop of guys as I was.
Yeah.
But when things were firing on all cylinders, the young guys that were training between PWA and APWG and doing IWA shows, like your Parises and your Kaya Drakes and your Jax Jordans and your Jude Londons, like all of those guys have only been in it for a cup of tea.
Yeah.
But they're already at such a level because you can train once or twice a week for 5 years and get to a certain point, and those guys that are training 4 times a week are going to get to that point in half the time, if that makes sense. Like, they're doing double the training, which is in their learning curve.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, of course, they're going to look better in a shorter period of time because essentially they're doing more, even though they've been doing it for less of an expanse of time, say 2 years instead of 4 years. They've done more in that 2 years than someone else who's training once or twice a week has done in 4 years.
Yeah, of course. How much does like quality and quantity come down into it though? Because obviously the quality of training is going to be super important as well.
Yeah, quality is super important. I think quantity is maybe not as important, but it's still super, super important. I think you much training, but you have to have those bad matches. You have to work with those difficult talent. I always felt like I learnt more in a situation where I was working with someone less experienced, just in the sense of my own personal growth. I felt like there was more opportunities for me to see where I could improve in a manner that would protect my inexperience. I thought that when I worked with guys more experienced than me, I always had a pretty good idea before I wrestled them what my strengths and weaknesses were. Whereas when I wrestled someone less experienced than me, it always illuminated things that I either had glossed over previously or had never thought of before. So I felt like I learnt more in a sense of providing me with opportunities to better protect an inexperienced opponent.
Right. So would you say the best philosophy then, because, I've had people on the show before that are like, the whole working smaller shows versus working bigger shows, and they want to focus on just running the bigger shows if they can and stuff. Are you the kind of advocate for take a booking wherever? Take it and just get in the ring.
In the early days, yes.
Right.
I think in your first 2 or 3 years, you just need to work as many places as you can, against as many people as you can, in as many venues as you can, for as many promoters as you can, in front of as many different crowds as you can. Whether it be for Wrestling Go on a Sunday afternoon in a full-on family-friendly show, or whether it be at the Corner Hotel for Wrestle Rock on a Friday night in front of 300 fucking drunk idiots. The things that you will learn on the Friday night at Wrestle Rock in front of drunk idiots is vastly different to what you're going to learn on the Sunday afternoon in front of the family audience. Now, I'm not one, who's to say which is more valuable? You're never going to get the same experience in front of the Sunday afternoon audience if you only ever do the Wrestle Rock shows. So then when you're put in a situation where you might be killing it on your Wrestle Rock or your MCW or your Underworld or whatever it may be, which have very specific aesthetics, have very specific styles, have very specific audiences and the tastes of those audiences. And if you never develop a style to suit other tastes, suddenly when you get thrown into an environment like an NXT or a New Japan or something, you're not equipped for those experiences.
Right.
So some of them might not always be good. Some of them are going to be terrible. I think sometimes you need to have those terrible experiences to motivate you to work harder to not have them again in the future.
Right. Good stuff. So, I mean, you talked about, your matches with more experienced individuals and what have you. Now, there's a stellar run that you had in IWA just a couple years ago, right? So we're getting 14 years or so into your career at this point. So you're pretty experienced, but you're also working with names the likes of Damian Slater, Ryan Eagles, Jonah Rock, Mick Moretti, Matt Cross at one point in an IWA ring. Tell us about that run. It looks incredible on paper.
Yeah, and it was probably more incredible in real life for someone like me to be humbled, I think. I think I learned a lot about how much further I had to go. Working with, Damien had, at the time, had just not too really come off the Cruiserweight Classic, which at the time, it's not as... that was the biggest show on WWE at the time. People were religiously watching that, and it was, the first different thing. That was before the Mae Young Classic. That was, the thing. That was the first time they had tried something like that.
It was their testing ground.
Yeah, and it was so well received. People were loving it.
Yeah.
So, he wrestled Tajiri. Damien has always been, for I do not know why, one of the most underrated dudes in the world. He has the ability, the look, the career, everything that you could want in a professional wrestler, Damien has and should be on the world stage. Yeah. So to work with someone like him was just an incredible learning experience. And then obviously his style is very different to a Jonah Rocks. And Jonah's just as gifted, obviously. He's just been signed to the Fed, which I think is a few years later than what it should have been. But he's that talented with a totally different style and a totally different personality and a totally different demeanor and a totally different way of putting things together in a manner that made sense. I feel like I learned more from Jonah than I've learned from anyone else in Australian wrestling in my whole time. I only wrestled him 3 or 4 times and spent not a great deal of time with him prior to or after those matches. But in the short periods of time that I got to spend with him, I learned more off him than anyone else. In terms of in-ring stuff, he broke it down and explained it to me in a way that made me go, fuck.
Right, like putting things together, like why this move should go there, that sort of stuff?
Not even necessarily that. More the psychology of why things are done the way that they're done.
Right.
I already had a pretty good idea of everything else, but he clarified a lot of things, and he made clearer a lot of things that were previously not as clear. If I took 20 steps to get from point A to point B, Jonah explained it to me to get from point A to point B in 4 steps.
Right.
And I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Now, I honestly think he's one of the best minds in the business, and everyone will probably laugh at me because he's such a humble dude, and he's so not the kind of person that would take credit as being a brilliant mind, and his personality is so affable and such like an easygoing, joke-about kind of guy that he sometimes, I think, gets overlooked for how intelligent he is to the business, but is just a fucking mastermind. And I have a great deal of time for him, and I'm very appreciative of the opportunities that I got to work with him. Same goes for Ryan Eagles. That was an interesting one. Legitimately, Ryan Eagles and Mark Mercedes hate each other. That is not a storyline. That is not a work. That is not something that we fabricated. Okay. Ryan Eagles and Mark Mercedes, the two people that play those characters, legitimately hate each other. So at the time, Mark's the owner of IWA.
Yeah.
And I wasn't the champion at the time, but I was near the top of the card and had a little bit of pull in terms of suggesting matchups and suggesting people that we could bring in, and just being heard, my ideas just being heard.
Right.
And I distinctly remember the phone call to Mark and suggesting Ryan, and how quickly after I had gotten his name out of my mouth that Mark hung up on me. Like I don't even think I'd fully enunciated the word Eagles before the phone already clicked in my ear.
Yeah. Right, so you got Ryan
being
E,
able
and that
to
was
make
it.
that happen. Yeah, pretty much. Full credit to Mark for allowing that to happen. They both set their egos aside, and they did at the time what was best for business, and we did some really cool stuff. And then, they've gone their separate ways now, but Ryan is another fountain of knowledge, which can be seen in his training of current WWE superstars.
Yeah.
Another genius.
Yeah, absolutely.
His divisive personality detracts from people's opinion of his genius.
Right, well, let's get to divisive personalities, yeah? Because you have somewhat of a divisive personality yourself.
I wouldn't say somewhat.
You're not afraid to ruffle
I would
feathers.
say unquestionably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I was looking through your social media, and you wished an interesting gift for Misfit for Christmas. Let's put it that way, right? So, is it sort of part of the persona? Is it just, you're just not afraid to be unapologetically you? What's the thought process there?
Sometimes I just think, so that's the problem. Sometimes I think there's just not a thought process. I just say things to make myself laugh.
Right.
Sometimes that's probably, not sometimes, that's definitely a lot of the time what has gotten me in trouble behind the scenes is I say shit just because I think it's funny, not really considering people may perceive that. And I totally get how people could see that or think that I am a dickhead because I have given them every reason to believe that.
Right.
But honestly, 99% of the time and 99% of the things that I say and do are not done with malice or bad intention. It's purely for the fact of, at that point in time, for the split second before I said it, I thought it was funny. And then 14 seconds later, I forgot about it.
Right. Right.
I guess people that know me well enough to know the person behind the character and the character know that there is a definite blurring of the lines, but it's always tongue-in-cheek.
Yeah. Well, look, I think that blurring of the lines can serve well, though, right? I mean, you get legitimate heat from crowds.
Yeah.
Which in the era of the cool heel, I mean...
I grew up renting old WWF VHSs from my local video store.
Right.
It wasn't available in my area, and if it was, I was too young to know how to acquire it other than to rent those VHSs. I was the only one that ever rented them. The guy knew me there by name. It was the only thing that I ever rented from there. And I think it was very early. It was like 88, 89 WWF. And then as I got older, I got into the tape trading, and I started watching a lot of older stuff like Bruiser Brody, and I was always fascinated. I saw Freddie Black finally. I was always fascinated by Freddie Blassie, so I would research and I would look up some of his escapades in the early days and how he would have to be escorted out of the venues after shows because people were legitimately wanting to stab him, or
yeah.
And I think actually a few times he was stabbed. That ability to make someone feel that way always fascinated me. Like, have the capacity to be one person but act like another person so convincingly that a grown-up would that's the objective of all professors, is to have the audience suspend belief.
Right.
I, as a grown-up, want to play a character so convincingly that I convince you as a grown-up to forget that we're both grown-ups and this is a show, and have you lose your shit.
Right. You want to bring out the worst in the fan.
Yes, absolutely. And as a bad guy, that should be my objective. That should be the objective of every person playing a bad guy. So that the alternate objective of the good guy should be to make someone feel that enamored, that loving, that adoring, that fanful of the good guy, that when they overcome the odds and when good triumphs over evil, as it inevitably always does, that reaction is so much more so. Right.
Yeah. So they're like grateful to the face for punching you so that they didn't have to.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. That's the whole back and forth. Aside from my creative, my payoff as a professional wrestler is not monetary in Australia. Like, I'm not going to bullshit anyone and make out like I make huge amounts of money. Yeah. My payoff is the creative realization of that character being believed by a room full of people. And if I can get someone to the point of such rage that they want to legitimately commit violence upon me, then that fulfills me. But it also makes the job of the good guy so much easier, because they hate me so much. The good guy should have to do so much less to be successful as a result of the bad guy's hard work.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I love it. Look, now, getting away from the character a little, let's talk about the man, Alex Titan. Yeah, so we talked about work ethic before. Now, you're a man of many interests and pursuits, right? Like, side hustle doesn't even begin to explain it. You got the vintage clothes thing going on. You had a podcast for a while. It's crazy.
Yeah, I've got my finger in a few pies. I've always been a big reader, and I read a Richard Branson book that said, to be successful, you have to have 5 forms of passive income.
Right.
So I have always tried to have at least 5. I work a full-time job in corporate security, which I regularly do between 70 and 80 hours a week. I run a vintage clothing store, Hollywood Trash Vintage. It's online at the moment, putting together enough pieces to do some pop-up stores, and going to have a big launch party and hopefully make that kind of something cool. I run an online streaming service for mixed martial arts and pro wrestling called Universal Fight Network.
Yes.
It's basically like an independent version of the WWE network.
Promotional consideration paid for by the following.
Sorry to interrupt, guys. We're going to get back to the interview in just a second, but first, just want to talk to the blokes in the audience. Let's be honest. We all want to look good. Whether we're going out to the local Grapps show, whether we're going out with friends, whatever we're doing, we want to look good. But we don't necessarily... I mean, we're not all Nikki Van Blair with daddy's credit card spending up a spree. We don't all necessarily like the shopping aspect that it takes to look good. And that's where Threadbox comes in. Threadbox is a monthly subscription box that sends personalized clothing to your door. When I say personalized clothing, I'm not talking about the weird stuff that has your name on it and says it's a family thing or whatever. I'm not talking about those things that you get on the Facebook ads. I'm talking about real, personalized, personal shopping experience. If you need shirts, they're going to look at shirts. If you need singlets, they're going to look at singlets. If you need shoes, they're going to look at shoes. You're in email contact with a stylist who will build a style profile based on how you like to look. I've got the fresh duds. CJ gets the classic box where you're a little bit plainer in his outlook, whereas I like to have funky patterns. And they're going to personalize that and tailor it to you and to your needs. And what's more is it's available on every budget with boxes starting from just $40. So if you want to look good with less effort and without all the pesky shopping stuff, if you want someone else to handle that for you, head over to threadbox.com.au, and because you are a B Plus player, they're going to give you 15% off your first box when you use the code TheB+15. That's threadbox.com.au, use the code TheB+15 and get your first box today. Right, the Universal Fight Network was one of the first pivot shares that I ever saw.
Yeah, we got on board. I mean, I think because in the very beginning, Universal Fight Network was a collaboration between myself, Lord Mark Williamson, and Tyson Gibbs.
Right.
I think I have to give credit for the actual idea to Lord Mark. And then their living situations changed and their relationship with IWA at the time soured, and I was still heavily involved. I was still friends with them, but we grew apart a little bit in terms of just how often we were talking, because I was so wrapped up in IWA business that they stepped away, and I kind of kept powering forward with it. But yeah, originally that was all Lord Mark. And
right. That doesn't surprise me. That guy's a genius.
Yeah, he's a fantastic person to creatively to have involved in the industry. As long as you can keep him motivated and occupied. He is very much like me in a sense of, if he is not occupied, he gets destructive just to amuse himself. He likes to fuck things up.
Right,
he's
like
got nothing
trying
else
to bring about the end of all things.
Exactly. People didn't keep him occupied, and look what happened. He fucking got Amazon Prime, and now he sets his mind to creating chaos.
He's going to be the end of us all.
That's what he will do. Exactly. And he warned everyone.
He did. He did. He put up a Kickstarter and other people funded the ending of the world.
His madness. Said, you're funding my madness. It's written there. I've screenshotted the actual pledge thing off Kickstarter, and he's like, I think in one of his Facebook posts it says, you probably shouldn't donate to this, or something to that effect. It's along the lines of, if you if you like peace and harmony, or if you are content with the status quo, do not give me your money, because that is not what is going to occur if this is pledged, or something along those lines. Like, he's a fucking madman.
Yeah.
And he told everyone, if you give me your money to do this, I'm going to shake the fucking foundations of this industry, and I'm going to do things that people have never done before. And a credit to him and Justine and Andrew and Adam, they're doing that. They're doing exactly that.
They're doing amazing things, yeah. I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of that whole thing. But getting back, we got away from it. Universal Fight Network, though. Your stuff. So you're heavily involved in, like, MMA and stuff as well. Do you actually, like, have you trained in the MMA style and that sort of thing?
Not enough to admit to it publicly. I have always been fascinated. I've always been a big fan. I have taken classes at a number of different schools with a number of different trainers, worked with quite a few different training partners. It's always been something that I've been super, super fascinated in. I just don't like getting punched in the face.
Yeah. Right.
It's just, I love the sport, and I would love to have balls big enough to compete in the sport, and I just don't think that I can get punched in the face repeatedly.
Right. So did you pick the right the right industries to put you with?
Well, if MMA had no DQ matches or referees as stupid as the ones in professional wrestling, or the immense leeway that people like myself are given to do illegal things in MMA as I do in wrestling, then it would be much more... If I could bring a steel chair into an octagon, fuck yeah, I would be involved in it.
Yeah.
We have dumb referees. I'm like, look, my shoelace is untied, and they run around in circles like a chook with their head cut off. And I've got like 15 to 30 seconds to pull out an illegal object and smash someone in the face with it.
Yeah.
MMA referees aren't that stupid. You actually have to be qualified to do it. Like, you have to pass a test. You have to be sanctioned by the New South Wales Athletic Commission. It's an actual process. Any Joe Blow can wear a referee shirt. There is fantastic referees. I still think they have hearing and sight deficiencies, but there is a few fantastic professional wrestling referees in organisations that have made it a priority to seek out people that are good at that job.
Yeah, I find myself, as a fan watching, the best referees are the ones you don't notice till it's time to make the count.
Exactly.
Yeah, so, and they do exist. They are out there.
I'll give a shout out to John Anderson. I think he's probably the best in Australia at the moment. Sneaky John Anderson. I think he primarily referees for Newcastle, PWA, and IWA, but he's probably on a bunch more shows. That flag or that pedestal used to be sat on by Fozzie and Daniel Beaumont, but I think by and large these days, John Anderson is the best referee in the country. And a great deal of respect to him because he takes it so seriously.
Yeah.
Like, he is legitimately someone who cares about the art of being a professional wrestling referee.
Right, which is amazing. I can't remember if it was John or Nick, but I remember seeing it was, I can't remember what match it was even, but people charged into the corner and he was in the corner and he managed to get out of the way, like, so craftily. And it was an amazing thing to witness. But yeah, no, definitely. I think wrestling needs good referees too. Like, it's one of those things where it's something you don't even think about, but every single person who's a part of putting on that show, I mean, if they're not sort of passionate and dedicated to the role they have, the show suffers.
Well, John is so serious about his art that he had, maybe still, I haven't spoken to him in quite a while, but he had for a very long time trained in the basics. So he developed that ring awareness. He developed that understanding of where to situate himself in the ring because he had learnt how to do so as a wrestler. So applied that knowledge as a referee to know if that's where I would be as a wrestler, then this is where I need to be as a referee to not be in the way, but also have the best vantage point of where wrestlers will be.
Right. Yeah, fantastic stuff. So let's get to this weekend, right? Hunter Valley Wrestling is where you are now. And you touched on it. You've sort of been dialing back a little, not taking as many bookings. You've kind of been just in Hunter Valley Wrestling for 2018. Like, you've made that your home.
Yeah. Originally, it was never announced anywhere or it was never publicized, but after I lost the belt to Matt Cross at Fighting Spirit in 2017, I was not going to wrestle anymore. I wasn't retiring per se, but I had no plans to work anywhere for anyone. It was just, I was so burnt out from such a long stretch of promoting myself, the organization, trying to break into mainstream media, helping to run things behind the scenes, that I was at a point where I wasn't going to do it anymore. I think that occurred in early October of 2017. In late December, it might have been the week between Christmas and New Year's, I had a chat with a wrestler from Hunter Valley who is a friend of mine. And we had never worked together before. We had been in the same organizations, but we had never actually had the chance to wrestle each other.
Right.
They were lacking in people of my persona and people of my persuasion, and people of my ability to not give much of a fuck about what anyone thinks.
Right.
And he asked if I would come and work. I would help to draw some attention back to the organization. He was interested in competing against me. And I was all for it, but for a very long time, myself and the owner of Hunter Valley Wrestling not only didn't speak, but had a noted distaste for each other.
Right, a contentious relationship there.
Yeah, contentious is a polite way of putting it. From what I understand, he fucking hated me. The feeling was relatively mutual. I can't even remember what it was about, as is the case with most wrestling feuds, for lack of a better term.
It's been that way forever.
Behind the curtains. Yeah, it generally starts over something super innocuous and escalates by Chinese whispers through other people in the locker room. And when you finally get the two people that supposedly have the issue together to talk as adults, it's generally hashed out pretty quickly or swept under the rug or apology. Whatever is the case, it's usually sorted out pretty quickly.
Right.
Which was the case in this instance. I said to the guy that approached me, yes, I'm interested, but I don't think that's ever going to fly. I appreciate the offer. If you think that you can get Grant Lindstrom to okay that, then yeah, I would love to come in and do that. About 20 minutes later, he had obviously spoken to Grant, who unblocked me on Facebook and was put in a group chat, and then he left the group chat for Grant and I to hash things out. He grabbed my phone number, or I grabbed his phone number. We jumped on a call together. We spoke for probably 45 minutes or an hour. We both apologized for things that were said and done in the past. We agreed that we could do good business together and that we would probably never be best friends, but for the sake of trying something special, that we would put our differences aside and see what happened.
Right.
And I guess Grant's probably regretting that right about now. But I have his title belt and
Yes.
a contract that says he can't do shit about it. So.
And you've had that title belt for over a year now.
I have the longest running Hunter Valley Wrestling champion in the history of the company. I also retired the marquee star, Slade Mercer, much to the dismay of the paying audiences, much to the dismay of the booking team, the management team, and the ownership team. All the odds were stacked against me, as they usually are in these circumstances. I ran roughshod on the company for the better part of a year, and I was successful in beating Slade Mercer a couple of times, and he was given. I was kind enough to give him a final opportunity to basically an all or nothing type situation. You beat me, you win the belt, you lose, you leave. And unfortunately for him, I was the better man again, and he has been forced to, I guess, effectively retire from Hunter Valley Wrestling.
Right. And, you know, I mean, the retirement of Slade Mercer aside, looking forward into 2019. Now, I don't want to say this is because of such a long-running, successful reign as champion that this is happening. I don't want to put that solely on your shoulders, of course. But big things look like they're on the horizon in 2019. We've got, you know, announcements like Gavin McGavin coming to Hunter Valley Wrestling, Adam Brooks coming to Hunter Valley Wrestling, and this weekend, JXT returning.
Yeah, man. I mean, I see as a reporter or as someone in your position that you can't be seen to be showing favoritism, but I think it's safe to say in this instance that is entirely a result of my hard work and my successful championship reign. It is what it is. No one was really interested in coming to Hunter Valley Wrestling until I became the champion. They saw the things that I have done in other organizations, and I have a renewed focus in 2019. That same effort and energy that I put into promotion and crossing into mainstream media and increasing the quality of in-ring product is back, and will be the primary focus of my attention and affection this year. And it is no surprise to me that people like Gavin McGavin and Adam Brooks and who was the other person you mentioned?
One J-Stick.
JXT,
yes,
the guy that I'm wrestling. Well, it definitely doesn't surprise me that young JXT he has made a successful career off being a poor man's Alex. He followed the blueprint pretty perfectly. He has taken a lot of the things that I innovated and attempted to make them his own. So it comes really as no surprise to me whatsoever that he would be, again, trying to ride on my coattails to future successes.
Right, and so that takes place this weekend. You have JXT on the January the 19th.
19th, Club Maitland City, yeah, this week, this Saturday night.
And what can people expect?
This is a tough one, man. I don't want to... Generally, as someone who is has a vested interest in there being a lot of people at the event, I don't want to lie to people and pretend like it's going to be an exciting contest. It's going to be a back and forth encounter of monumental proportions. I think it's going to be the way that it has been for the last 12 months, and that is basically a demolition. The same thing happened with Slade Mercer, the same thing happened with Misfit, the same thing happened with Falco, with the Buccaneer, with the WWF 1988 called and they want their stupid characters back. The people that I have been forced to wrestle this year have fallen well short of the mark, and I think JXT is going to be no different. I haven't been following what young JXT has been doing. I assume he's still kind of wasting away trying to get an Inter-Commonwealth Championship match at MCW. Honestly, I can't remember the last person he wrestled. I can't remember the last thing that he did other than he was on the cover of Men's Health or Health and Fitness or something along those lines. Conveniently in the midst of a nationwide interest in wrestling as a result of Alex Titan on the Project, Alex Titan on the Disney Channel, Alex Titan in an 8-page spread of the Daily Mail, Alex Titan on the cover of 50-plus local newspapers, Alex Titan on Triple J, and however many other mainstream media outlets that I was covered by previously. That sparked an interest in Australian wrestling that has been smartly capitalised on by cunning people like Joshua in my absence, I would say. But as I said, I'm focused and I am re-energised to take back the limelight. and give the Australian public that may not be familiar with Australian wrestling a look at what a charismatic and enigmatic champion looks like.
All right. Well, I think that's the best place to leave it. So before I let you go, Alex, can you just let people know where they can find you online, where they can watch Hunter Valley?
Hunter Valley Wrestling on Facebook, Hunter Valley or HVW tweets. I think it's Hunter Valley Wrestling on Instagram as well. Alex Titan X on all social media. Alex Titan X on Facebook, Alex Titan X on Instagram, Alex Titan X on Twitter. Club Maitland City, Saturday, January 19th, which is this Saturday. I'm pretty sure it's close to sold out, but if you're in New South Wales and you want to come along, send a message to the guys on Facebook and see what they can do for you. Tell them that you're a listener of Plus Podcast, and I'm sure that they will make an exception and squeeze some extra bums into extra seats.
All right, thanks so much for coming on the show, Alex.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, mate.
All right, so there you have it. Alex Titan with a brilliant look into the mind of Alex Titan there. Now, yeah, I apologize for getting heated before. I've had a drink, I've calmed down, and I'm ready to take us through the week that is to come in Australian professional wrestling. Before I do, big shout outs to all the other people out there doing Aussie Grappler interviews. If you liked that interview, and you want to hear more from Australian wrestlers or wrestler-adjacent people, here is where you can do that this week. Dowie James was on the Wide World of Wrestling to hype up the Melbourne City Wrestling Vendetta show. Apparently, that podcast came out after I'd already recorded last week, so I didn't give the plug then, but Wide World of Wrestling, Dowie James was on. Also this week, they had Jimmy Havoc. They spoke to him right before the event. They talk a lot about music, and also, of course, wrestling. So if you want to hear that one, Wide World of Wrestling, have an interview with Jimmy Havoc. Jimmy Havoc's everywhere this week because he was also on the Turnbuckle. But that's not the reason to tune into On the Turnbuckle this week. On the Turnbuckle had a very special guest on their episode this week. Me. I joined the On the Turnbuckle guys for a quick little chat about the Performance Centre in Australia situation that Triple H mentioned to news.com.au, and we kind of decided very quickly that, you know, Conspiracy Greg was starting to come out, and we decided very quickly that best thing to do was probably to do a deep dive. We could talk about it for an hour or so, so we're going to do a bonus episode for you guys here on the bplus.com, and that's coming up soon. So yeah, Jimmy Havoc was on the Turnbuckle this week. Definitely check that one out. I will drop a link, as I do, in the show notes. But now, let's take a look at what's happening this weekend near you, starting in my own home state, South Australia. On Friday night, ACW present Evolve 20 at the ACW Arena. Adam Brooks is in town. He's defending his ACW championship against PWSA champion Matt Hayter. There's also a contract signing taking place for Riley versus Blake Mitchell. They've got a long-standing feud, of course. We're finally going to get the match. Contract signing takes place this Friday at Evolve. It's going to be a scorcher. This goes for all across Australia this weekend. There are going to be some very hot days, and what better way to escape than to get out to your local Grapps. But please stay safe as you go out to these local shows as well, especially ones that may be in smaller venues. Just make sure you're properly hydrated and everything. But I will be at Evolve 20. I'll be doing the social media for Adelaide Championship Wrestling, so come up and say hi as we watch the Grapps. Adam Brooks, Matt Hayter, that one's going to be a show stealer for sure. Pro Wrestling South Australia are running on Saturday night. Adrenaline Pro mainstay Jason Crash returns to South Australia to take on Matt Hayter for that PWSA Heavyweight Championship in the Summer Rumble event. Also on the card is Lil Onyx versus Zane Zodiac, and of course the annual Summer Rumble match. So Saturday, 19th of January, 6:30 p.m. Tickets start at $15 for that one. Also on Saturday night, Riot City Wrestling hold an Academy show, RCW Live 44 at the training school there. Gods and Monsters take on the Millennials. Much more to come. Tickets are $10 for that one. Up in Queensland on Saturday night, Venom Pro Wrestling present Elimination Lockdown. First ever Elimination Lockdown steel cage match between Team Venom taking on Team Anti-Venom, with the winner taking control of the company. Adam Brooks and the VPW champion Tim Cater also scheduled to appear on this show, so that's being held at the Showman's Guild of Australasia. Tickets start at $10. Over in Perth, New Horizons Pro Wrestling returned for 2019 with Old School Reload at the Cockburn Youth Centre. Julian Ward is set to take on Art of Fighting champion Kyle Steria. A hybrid championship title match is scheduled between Aaron O'Malley and King Shaheel. Tickets for that one start at just $10. Down in Melbourne, Wrestle Rock. Wrestle Rock is back, and the Soviet invasion continues as the Cold War heats up. Former Olympian Jake Andrew Arthur takes on Wrestle Rock champion Mitch Waterman. UK deathmatch fan favourite Jimmy Havoc, who of course is featured on the Turnbuckle and Wide World of Wrestling this week, faces Australia's deathmatch favourite Mad Dog McRae in a no DQ match. We covered this in the news. This show is strictly 18 plus on Saturday night. Tickets are $28 for this one at the Corner Hotel. In New South Wales, IWA live and loud Friday at St John's Park Bowling Club. They return home after their little tour last week. No matches are announced for this one. Still, IWA champion Chris Abbott and many more are set to appear. Tickets just $10. Also on Friday night, Wrestling Go presents Swan Song. This one has a card. What a card. Diego has his last match on this show, so definitely get out to support Diego. Gavin McGavin continues his Gavin vs. Australia tour as he goes champion, mano a mano against silver medalist Ricky South. Jack Bonza takes on Jay Sorbet. Gat defends the gold medal against Massive Q in a new chapter for their rivalry. And of course, we talked about it earlier, Maddie Wahlberg, Big Fudge. They've swapped bodies. It's a Freaky Friday situation like the Lil Dicky song. And all this and more at the Marion Community Centre this Friday. You don't want to miss it. Tickets start at just $10. Meanwhile, in the Hunter region, you've got Newcastle Pro Wrestling 75 on Saturday night. That one's at Charlestown Bowling Club. Australian TV sensation and Newcastle Pro Wrestling champion, or is it Manly Pro Wrestling? I don't know. Jackson Kelly faces off against Matt Rogers in a steel cage match. The final spot for the Invictus tournament will be decided as Four Nations and Prefects face off to see who qualifies. Gavin vs. Australia tour, we talked about it for Wrestling Go. Here it is in Nui Pro as well. The Gavin vs. Australia tour lands in Nui Pro as Carter Deems accepts the open challenge to take on Gavin McGavin for the EPW Championship. The first and second row have already sold out for this one. Tickets range from $10 to $20. This Saturday, Charlestown Bowling Club. Get around it. Also on Saturday, just down the road at Club Maitland City, Hunter Valley Wrestling present their 5th annual Hunter Valley Rumble, with the winner receiving an open contract for any match they want. That's a good one to have in the bag. The Buccaneer and Caesar look to settle their differences as partners collide. Izzy Shaw defends her HVW Women's Championship against Immaculate Jasmine Vittora. DJ Sonic takes on Keegan Brettle. And of course, Alex Titan, you heard him just before. He's the longest reigning HVW champion. He is set to defend against JXT. Tickets for this one start at $15. Rumble matches are always good, so get on out to see this one. Over in New Zealand, the New Zealand branch of Impact Pro Wrestling presents Southside SmackDown on Saturday night. Say that 10 times fast. At Papa Toto Town Hall. 6:30 p.m. Tickets start at $28 for this one. You're going to see Liger challenge Jacob Cross for the IPW Heavyweight Championship. The Dapper Dynasty and James Shaw and Jukebox Hero are also set to clash over the New Zealand Tag Team Championships. Tickets start at just $10 for children, $28 for adults. On Friday night, however, Southern Pro Wrestling New Zealand SPW Fight Nights 11. That takes place at the Barracks in Invercargill. Jimmy Havoc will be appearing, as well as the longest reigning SPW Heavyweight Champion JK Moody and many, many more. Tickets are just $23 New Zealand dollars. Tickets are just $23 for that one, and very limited tickets are available for the Fight Night shows. They are growing and growing, so you definitely want to get out to see Fight Nights with Jimmy Havoc. That does it. That's everything that's happening across Australia and New Zealand this weekend that I know of. If I missed anything, please let me know. Of course, as always, you can follow me at Greg Unchained on Twitter, at The Greg Unchained on Instagram. We collectively are the B Plus Wrestle on Twitter because wrestling wouldn't fit. The B Plus Wrestling everywhere else except for Patreon, where we are just the B Plus. Could there be more coming? Who knows? Maybe we're going to do more than wrestling. Ooh, it's all a big mystery. So you can find that one at patreon.com/theb+. Get around it if you like what we do. You know, we appreciate any support you can give us. All of it goes straight back into growing the podcast, growing the website, growing the coverage and the eyes that we have on the Australian and New Zealand pro wrestling scene, because that's what it's all about. We watch global, we support local. Please hit the like button, the share button, the subscribe button, a 5-star review if you like what we do, and thank you so much for listening.
Hold one. Arm drag.
You're not doing this. Get out. Let me tell you
Coming.
Goodbye and good night.
Hold 2. Arm bar.
This is the worst town I've ever been in.
It's still real to me, damn it. Coming.
Hold 3. The moss covered 3-handle family